You want it? We have it. The hottest mortgage and real estate strategy broadcast in the nation. A Smarter Way Home with your host, Danielle Boote and Victor Bals. 50 years combined experience, ranked in the top 1% in the nation for home loan originations 2020. Promise to expand your knowledge, utilizing creative mortgage financing and home buying strategies. Build a bridge for a better quality of life. Get your brain cells firing for a smarter way home. And welcome to another episode of A Smarter Way Home. Modern mortgage solutions and home buying strategies for consumers and real estate professionals alike. I am your host, Victor Bals, loan officer, 20 plus years, and I want to introduce my co-hostess with the mostest, the loan officer extraordinaire, Mrs. Danielle Boote.
How are you doing today, Vic? You're full of energy here.
I am full of energy. I'm going to a soccer tournament, my second from last soccer tournament for my kid. We've had over 2,000 games in 23 years. And I thought when I was, when my wife said, hey, we're going to get the kids into soccer, that I just have to buy a $20 ball, right? Little did I know it would cost me $15,000 a year for the last 20 years with all the soccer tournaments and all that. But it's bittersweet. But
yes, it is exciting and sad all at the same time.
Yes, it is. So who do we got? We got kind of a special show today, and this is kind of right off the cuff. We picked someone up off the streets, basically, and introduce our guest, Danielle. What do we got?
It is our great pleasure to introduce Tori Nichols, who is a videographer with Wayne Media here in Brighton. Now, we've known Tori for, 9 months, almost a year since we've been working together. And Tori is a potential first-time homebuyer in the future here. So we were just discussing first-time homebuyers and questions that they have. And Tori said, I'd love to ask you guys some questions. So this is kind of impromptu in our world, but we were like, this is going to be cool. So we know that first-time homebuyers have lots of questions. So we're going to mix it up a little bit today. Tori is going to ask some questions and we'll answer them and see where the show goes. So we're really excited. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Tori.
Yeah, as you said, I've been working with you guys for about a year, but I've been with Wayne Media for about a year and a half now, and it has been phenomenal. But before that, I started here last year, March, and then I graduated college in December. So needless to say, I'm still pretty young.
and how old
that's okay,
are you?
Fresh mind.
How old are you?
I am 23 years old.
23. I bought my first home at 23 years old. Danielle, how old were you when you bought your first home?
20.
20.
My goal is 24. I'm almost over the cuff. So
okay. And you're married. You're recently married. Tell us about that.
Yep, I got married last August to my college sweetheart, and so we've been living in an apartment at Whitmore Lake right now. We're at our year mark on that lease in May. We already signed to go month by month for the next year from May to May. So obviously you going month by month, there's something in the works there stating that you don't want to be tied up to a lease. You're thinking about entering the home buying market. Yes. Ideally, my goal would be to meet with you two. Maybe this is my meeting. I guess this works.
Yeah.
Well, we will not discuss any personal information.
No. Here in the next couple months of course, with the crazy market, you never know. But with the hope of maybe around December to February, seeing what's going on.
So before understanding some things about mortgages, there must be some pillow talk, let's call it that, or some conversations around the dinner table about thinking you want to buy a home. What are those conversations you and your husband are having?
We just know, well, to be honest, as someone very young, all of the knowledge that I will share in this show, 100% of it comes from either you guys in the podcast or my boss, Rob Johnson. Okay. Before meeting you guys, absolutely nothing. So anything I spew out is all your words.
Okay.
But we know that we're in love with the Howell area. We know that we want something that's just reasonable, that's wise financially to, like I said, from learning from you guys, like we want to put money into our future. And the way to do that is by having a home. So aside from that, I'm trying to have little to no expectations because it's such an up and down road, as you both know, that you're trying to just be open to it all.
Now, have you thought about it all? How long you might be in your first home? Has that crossed your mind at all yet?
Not really. I mean, I have obviously no intention of leaving this incredible office in this area. So,
Now, have you thought about size so you've already thought about location, but have you thought about what you need in your first home as far as size, minimum amenities? Is that already crossing your mind?
probably there's a difference between need and want.
Yes, but that's a good distinction
Yes.
though. And you can have those two lists to say this is our minimum need, this is what we would really want.
Yes. I would say minimum need, we know we would like a 3-bedroom because we would hope for children someday. And then our highest want is a closed off backyard, like just trees backed up to some woods. So,
Okay, and what brings up another question is the timing of each home. Because this first home that you're thinking about buying, is this going to be your 1 to 3 year home just to get your feet wet at home ownership? Or is this the 1 to 5 years, the 10 years plus, the forever home? What is in your mindset there?
I would probably say 5 to 10. Of course, you can't predict what's going to happen in life, but that would probably be my hope.
Well, because some of the things that we discuss here is a price range. Because if you're looking at 1 to 3 year home, and maybe it may be a less expensive home just to get your feet wet and get used to home ownership, and then use that money and then move up a notch as your family grows or something like that. So that's one of the questions we like to field, is find out how long you plan on living in this home. Because if you knew you were going to transfer out of state in 2 years because of something, maybe home ownership now is not the thing for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Any other questions there, Daniel? How should we take this journey here?
Well, typically, and again, we're probably not going to talk any financial numbers today. Typically what we're going to look at is what you're paying now, where you think you would be comfortable with a house payment, because you may have already thought about that. And then we look at both of your incomes and say, okay, this is your qualification range. Okay. And based on current market conditions with interest rates, we're going to be able to calculate this is what a principal and interest payment would be, which is what you're repaying on the mortgage. We'll also include homeowners insurance, property taxes, and any mortgage insurance, assuming, being a first-time home buyer, you won't be putting 20% down. Then we can, with all of that, we can then narrow down, is your range realistic? Most buyers that we see these days will spend 22 to 25% of their total income prior to deductions, not what you're actually bringing home. And that's the other part of the budgeting equation, because you need to know what you take home, and that's how you set up your household budget. We're going to qualify you on that top line number. So that's why we want to make sure it's not too high or out of your uncomfortable range. The big conversation we have to have nowadays is what's realistic. I have had people call me and go, well, we really don't want more than an $800 house payment. Well, in the Detroit metro area, that's not going to be easy to find. Definitely not easy to find in Livingston County. But depending on what you're paying for rent, we can get you in a range that's going to keep you close to where you're paying for rent, or maybe slightly more. But if you qualify and it makes sense, then you're jumping into home ownership and building wealth for the future.
Let me ask a question there. So what is the current rent, or what's it going to be on your month to month?
It is going to be $1,050.
$1,050. Now, let me ask you this next question. If you guys were to jump into a house, what is the maximum you believe you guys could dish out for principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and PMI? Where would you guys feel comfortable?
Well, I'll answer that question with asking you if what you think we've been doing thus far is also wise. So I came up with the number to answer your question as $1,500 a couple months ago, and we've currently been practicing that. And that additional, we've just been putting into savings to help with whatever our down payment percentage will be when
That's fantastic.
when we start.
Yep, that's 100% the right answer.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
It would be terrible if Danielle was like, Tori, that's so dumb.
No, it's really smart, because sometimes buyers will come to us, and we have literally seen people with less than $1,000 in the bank. They want to buy a house. Okay. And you've probably heard us talk on shows. Even if you do zero down rural development, which is a fantastic program, you're still going to need closing cost money. And the buyers that don't have anything saved have no, let's say no teeth when writing an offer.
Yeah.
Because you've heard us talk about you may have to go over asking price. You need a deposit on the house. You're going to need to pay for a home inspection and an appraisal. And if you don't have any money in the bank, nor do you have anything saved, or the ability to save anything, that's the first problem.
Yeah.
Those buyers, unfortunately, are going to have a very difficult time. The other thing is, yes, you're setting yourself up for a ton of success. And even if you found a house and said, you know what, we prepared for $1,500, but we decided because of the market, interest rates, whatever, we're going to get a $1,600 house payment. Yeah. That's not going to scare you because you've already done this preparation.
Been practicing
right?
it.
Let's just back up a little bit. A couple points that Danielle made. So, no matter what the lender is going to require is the minimum down payment on the particular program. And as we talked about rural development, it's zero down payment does not mean zero cash to close. So regardless of what program, we're going to collect that down payment, and let's just use rural development as an example. So that's $0 there, but they're going to collect the closing cost on the loan, and let's say that's about an average of $4,000. I think that's fair. Then they're going to collect a year of taxes up front at closing. So if the taxes are $3,000 a year, there's $3,000 right there. The $4,000 plus the closing cost, plus let's say a year of homeowners insurance at $1,000, right? So right there, there's $8,000 you're going to need out of pocket. Okay, unless you ask for seller concessions where the seller helps pay some of those closing costs, which in this market is few and far between where we have that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, on that $1,500 payment that you just discussed, you would feel comfortable with, I actually backed out $3,000 a year in taxes. I backed out $1,000 a year for insurance, and I also backed out $80 a month for PMI, and that would buy you about it would get you about $194,000 mortgage in today's interest rate environment at 5.5%. Okay, so now the question is, are we able to find something in Livingston County, how, in the $200,000 area? That may be far and few between, but at least this gets you on the radar.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, next question. How much cash do you think you guys are going to be able to have to put into this investment at closing?
Well, I think our goal has been exactly that number you gave out, 8,000, if not a little bit more, because you can't help as a first-time home buyer and being young want to make it cute. Like I want to get the keys and go in and be like, okay, I want to paint the walls. I want to. You don't want to look at your bank account after and be like, wow, that's a lot of zeros.
Right, and
with no numbers in front of it, just zeros.
We don't want you to be broke after closing.
Yes, exactly. So
let me ask you this. Do you guys have the ability to get some gift funds from a family member, mothers, fathers, brothers, in-laws, or something like that to help towards this investment?
That's a good topic because the answer is yes, but I've kind of always been curious about how that correlates with taxes or what you need to claim or anything like that.
Well, it doesn't affect you at all. And your parents or who's ever going to gift you, they can check with their accountant. But your parents can, I think, gift you. What is it, 12 or 15,000?
I think it's up to like 16 now
for each sibling, or something like that.
When a parent gives a gift to a family member, it's, for instance, your parents could give you a gift and your husband a gift. Oh, so it's 16,000 per person, not per household, right? So sometimes the in-laws give a gift, parents can give a gift, and any of that can make an impact. So rural development is a great option, but there are also low down options on a conventional mortgage. You will qualify with 3% down. FHA is 3.5%. Now, typically what most buyers these days, because we want to give you as many options as possible, we might give you 2 options. We might say, Tori, rural development might be your first choice, conventional would be your second. And the reason we want to prepare you that way is in case a seller says, we've got multiple offers and we're going to look at all the conventional ones. So your real estate agent will want to make sure that they communicate with that listing agent and say, our borrower is very well qualified. Here's the pre-approval, and they can go conventional or RD.
Rural development.
Yes, rural development, whatever the seller is more inclined to work with. Now, on a $200,000 home, 3% down payment is $6,000. Plus, you would still need the closing
That
cost.
$8,000 we discussed.
Yeah.
So if you save, for instance, $10,000 and possibly you get a gift from a family member, conventional could be entirely possible for you. Payment-wise, they're going to be similar. You know, they're going to be similar in that realm. And I think most first-time home buyers in Livingston County are probably between what, 200 and 260,000 right now.
Yeah, agreed.
And the houses do come on the market in that range. They will sell quickly. And as you get your feet wet, or even if you're looking online now, that's part of an education process. Then you can see what the homes are listed for, what they sell for, and how quickly they go. And if you narrow in on, you want to be, for instance, in downtown Howell, what you have to be careful with the internet is you can't, if you look right now, you might go, for instance, I looked yesterday on realtor.com and I looked in Pinckney. There is not one home actively listed in Pinckney. Not one in that village corridor. Okay. That little downtown area. Well, it doesn't mean that there aren't for sale signs in front yards.
True.
As soon as they go on the market, they're pending within 3 or 4 days. So the lucky buyer is the one that gets in there first, makes a decision quickly, and gets under contract. And then the house is off the internet. So if you're only looking at the internet, the fallacy is, well, there's no homes on the market. Well, there are homes on the market. They're selling quickly. Motivated buyers get not lucky. Motivated buyers will buy.
They're motivated.
They're motivated.
They'll go.
Non-motivated buyers look, write offers that aren't strong or whatever. And, we could do a whole show about buyers' mistakes, honestly. But, I have a client who's been looking for a couple months. They just went into contract under $250 in downtown Howell. So it's out there. You just have to be prepared, ready to jump on it.
Well, let's talk about that. There's motivated buyers, and then there's prepared buyers. We have many motivated buyers that aren't prepared. And as Danielle stated, we always like to have option one. And in your case, we would love to go rural development as option one, and conventional 3% down as option two. But we as lenders and you need to be prepared. We need all your income documents, all your asset documents, have you understand how we're going to crunch your cash to close within a couple $100 at closing your payment within $10. So when that one does come on the market, you can jump immediately. Not him and haw, I'm going to think about it. Maybe I'll schedule a showing next week.
Yeah.
This market, that ain't going to happen. Now, also Danielle brought up about option A, rural development, and option B, conventional. With the government loans, there's always also an appraisal inspection, okay? And what the government loans, rural development is a government loan, they are looking for health and safety items to be concerned about, okay? Loose and hanging wires, cracked windows,
Peeling paint.
Peeling paint. That's the big one, is the peeling paint. Even on the shed out in the back, okay? So if there's peeling paint on the soffits or on the shed in the back, they will turn down financing. That has to be remedied prior to closing, okay? And a lot of sellers may say, you know what? I don't want to deal with it. I'm not going to fix any peeling paint. I want a conventional offer. Even though that they stated they would accept rural development financing on the listing ticket, because on that listing ticket, you're going to see the types of financing available, that they'll accept cash, conventional, VA, FHA, and sometimes rural development. And also, in Livingston County, you'll find a lot of properties that say, yes, we'll accept VA and FHA, but it doesn't say rural development. Because at times the agents forget that all of Livingston County is eligible for rural development. So if they're accepting FHA or any type of government financing in Livingston County, it would also qualify for rural development. But if that listing agent and your buyer agent state that, hey, they're taking rural development, but I see some stuff there, it may not pass inspection, you need to be willing to go to stage 2, on a conventional 3% down, which to me in the long run is a better loan, it's just going to cost you. You'll have to invest a little bit more. You'll have to invest that 3% down payment. And that gets us to that $14,000, $15,000 range where you have about $8,000, which means we need about $6,000 from the bank of mom and dad's. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I did have a question about the gifting that you guys were talking about. So say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably most parents can't just gift 16, let alone per couple. So it's a lot.
You need to get other parents.
That's a lot, though, especially unplanned.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know if a parent's planned for it for a
Well,
long
you know
time.
how well, before you go further, I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and my response is exactly what my parents says. They say, "Hey, look, we rather see, you're going to get it one way or the other. We rather see you enjoy it while we're alive than when we leave." So, but go continue.
But say someone were to gift a large amount like that, more than like, here's $1,000 or, you know, something just to help. What point in the pre-approval process would I have to tell you that was being gifted? Should I bring it to the table from the beginning? Like, hey, I've been told that to expect this. Is that more going to be just not included in what you guys do, but I have it for closing or anything for that happens after?
We want to know as soon as you know.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we start the pre-approval process, particularly, I think more in the last 2 years, we talk about gifts than we did a few years ago because of the competitiveness of the market. Yeah. So if your parents say, hey, we'll give you $2,000, you know, one set of parents gives $2,000 or $3,000, the other set of parents gives $2,000 or $3,000. You say, we know we have $5,000 or $6,000 in a gift.
You have a verbal commitment at this point.
When you have the verbal commitment, we want to know.
Okay.
Because then it will help us guide you to say, okay, then here's our strategy. Maybe instead of using rural development, we say, no, let's just go conventional. So here's one of the benefits of a conventional mortgage is that the mortgage insurance that you pay monthly will fall off the loan someday. If you do rural development, it stays on for 30 years. Now, this is your first house. Most first-time homebuyers only live in that first house for 5 to 10 years, sometimes shorter, depending on market conditions. But you just never know.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes first-time homebuyers could be there 15 years. So it could be a situation where, again, when you may start looking and say, okay, instead of looking for that starter home, because we know we can qualify for more based on what your financials are and your budget is, you may say, you know what, we want to bump our purchase price up a little bit. And if you do that, you may wind up in a home that is more not like that first home.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you define purchase price for me? That's what you down.
The purchase price would be the price that you pay for the house.
The whole. Gotcha.
The whole price. Yeah.
Making sure.
Yeah. Nope. Good question. Good question.
Let's go back to that gift again. You know, we're talking about that. We're going to try to get $6,000 from the banks of moms and dads, right? But our goal is to go rural development. We may get an offer accepted rural development, which is $6,000 less, but you may want to tell the parents, hey, I just want the $6,000 because you may not have to use that towards your closing, but now post-closing, now you've got $6,000 for an emergency account. Okay. And now you may say, well, I want to put this down because you can put money down on rural development. As long as you don't have 20% to put down, you can put, anything you want down, less than 20%. If you have more than 20%, you cannot use rural development, okay? But let's say you say, well, Vic, I got that $6,000. I want to put it down on my mortgage. You know, I want to lower that payment.
Yeah.
How much do you think $6,000 would lower your payment a month?
I genuinely don't know.
About $26.
Wow.
So now the question is, would you rather have $6,000 in the bank and have a $28 a month more payment, or have nothing in the bank and have a $28 less payment a month?
Very much so hold on to that money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that $6,000 in the bank, and if you just put it under your pillow making 0% interest and you pull $26 a month out of there, that $6,000 would last you about 15 years before you ate up that money.
Yeah.
So I always advise, keep your money in the bank. You wake up one day with a headache and say, I want to get rid of money, go send it to the mortgage company. I guarantee they'll take it. You know, so there. So, okay. So now.
Yeah. So again, rule of thumb, if you figure $10,000 in your loan amount is about $55 a month.
Yep.
So in the big scheme of things, when we're talking about what a purchase price would be on the house, the difference between $230 or $240 is $55.
Wow.
No,
that's really good to know.
It's not a huge difference. Okay. What also is an important part of the house payment is what the property taxes are. Now, when we qualify you for a mortgage and you find a particular home, first we're going to estimate taxes. Vic and I always kind of use conservative numbers for your homeowner's insurance and your taxes because we want you to get out there and start looking, but be realistic. We're not going to shoot you a number that's so low that when you find that perfect house and we run numbers on it, you go, well, Danielle, that's not the number you told me. Right?
Yeah, we like to overestimate and say, basically, if you can swallow this, things are only going to get better as we move along. So we will overestimate on taxes, overestimate on cash to close. So it's a pleasant surprise. You don't want the word loan officer and surprise in the same sentence.
Amen. And that's the way my brain works too. I would rather put more in the savings and then see it dwindle as you need to pay taxes and things. And then at the end be like, oh, wow, a bigger Christmas present, or something like that.
Now, the other thing with property taxes, the way they work in the state of Michigan is our property taxes, you will homestead the property when you close. That means you will file a document with the township or the city that says, this is my primary residence. I qualify for the tax reduction that the state of Michigan gives all homeowners on their primary residence. It saves you about a third on taxes. Michigan has a unique way of taxing real estate to protect us as consumers and homeowners. When you buy a house, they're going to reassess it the next year approximately at 50% of what you paid for it. So to keep the math simple, if you buy a house for $200,000, it will likely be assessed for about $100,000. The year after you purchase it, they're going to uncap the state equalized value. They'll uncap the taxable value. There's two numbers that the state gives you. They give you a state equalized value, which fluctuates yearly with market conditions in real estate. And then they give you a taxable value, which is capped after you buy the house and will only go up by the rate of inflation. So the one thing that you have to understand as a first-time buyer is that even if we qualify you for a mortgage, we're going to use seller's taxes last year. With the year after you purchase the home, those taxes are likely to go up a little bit. Now, how much they go up will depend on how long that seller's been in the house. If the seller has lived there 30 years, the taxes could be very low. So if we estimate $3,000 a year for taxes and you find a house that has $1,800 a year taxes, you go, wow, that's really low. Well, that's what we're going to qualify you off of. You'll end up with a lower payment than we were originally estimating, but within about 18 months of closing, that will adjust and your taxes will go up. And then it will be recapped again. So that's another variable with when we're qualifying you and how those taxes factor in, because the taxes and the insurance are a big chunk of what your house payment is.
Yes. And once we get you out there on the streets looking for a house, we're going to work with your real estate agent, because as you narrow in on a property, you don't really want to trust a Zillow or Realtor.com. Yeah. They have some data there. But we're going to request from your agent, because your agent is part of the lending team and also with you. They're going to send us a PRD, public record, or the listing ticket, which will have the actual summer taxes, the winter taxes, any village taxes. But also on that listing ticket is the SEV, state equalized value. So we will be able to calculate a cash to close within a couple $100, a payment within about $10 based off the day we're closing, but we are also able to push that into the Michigan State Property Tax Estimator. We will pop in the SEV, and it'll tell you the worst case of where the taxes are going to go next year. So again, you don't have that surprise. You can use that for planning purposes.
Yeah. Speaking of planning, this is probably more of just like a homeowner's question than a mortgage question, but whatever that tax number is that you estimate and then knowing potentially it'll go up, how, just as you're adulting and owning your home and paying your mortgage, do you prepare for those taxes? Do you
Save it.
But
you would split that up by calculating how much that would be divided by 12 months and set it aside, or?
Great question. What you will get an assessment as a new homeowner, typically about March 1st. Every year you're going to get this document from the city.
Don't throw it away. Got it.
Exactly. When you get that number, particularly the year after you buy the house, it's going to give you that new taxable value. If you call us and say, okay, I got my taxable value, then we can literally calculate by hand, this is what the summer bill will look like, and this is what the winter bill will look like. In the state of Michigan, we have two tax bills, July 1st and December 1st. They're different amounts. They're not the same. And how they're broken down can be different depending on the township you're in, the city, or even the county. So Oakland County taxes look different than Livingston County. And it's up to the municipalities to decide how that they're going to bill those. Now, if you know that the taxes are, for instance, let's say they're going to go up $100 a month, and we know that in March, okay, the first tax bill will be due July, the second one would be due December. So you're not going to get a revised mortgage statement till probably a full year later. When you have a mortgage, you're going to have something called an escrow account. It is like a savings account that is attached to your mortgage, so that when you're making your payment, you're putting away 1/12 of the homeowner's insurance, 1/12 of the property taxes, and the PMI all go into that account, and then the mortgage company pays those bills out annually as they come in. Even though the mortgage company is going to pay those bills, it is always your responsibility as the homeowner to keep an eye on that. So you're correct. You save that assessment statement. You will also save the tax bills, and you will save the homeowner's insurance statements. And you should compare those from one year to the next. Did it change at all? Is it the same? Is it higher? Is it lower? Because then you can project, is this going to impact my payment? If you know the taxes are going up, you can put money in your savings account and wait until the mortgage company rebalances your escrow, or you could potentially add additional money right to your escrow account. When you get your mortgage statement, it's going to say, this is your minimum payment, and you could allocate money for additional principal payments, which go against the loan, or additional escrow. Usually what I tell my clients to do is call me. I would want to see your current escrow statement to see what the balance is. And then when we decide, okay, this is where your taxes are going to be for this next year, we'd make the decision. The problem with putting extra money in your escrow account is that there are federal regulations in regards to what a lender can hold. So if you put money in there and they don't realize the taxes are going up and they analyze your escrow, they might just send you a big old refund check. And then it confuses you as the new homeowner to go, why are they sending me money back? I was putting extra money in there. So I would typically default and say, tuck the extra money in your savings account. And then when that bill gets paid, you can then say, okay, my balance is low. Let's send a little bit extra in to get ahead of it. The problem is if you don't pay attention to your escrow account, and the mortgage company is going to pay those bills whether there's money there or not. So if it goes negative, we think about overdrawing your checking account, right? We know that that's not good. If you overdraw the escrow account, then when the mortgage company rebalances your escrow, they're going to ask for the shortage, and then they're going to rebalance for the next year. So you kind of get a double whammy. What was a $100 adjustment could be a $200 adjustment in your payment for the next 12 months because you went negative.
And what they're going to do, the servicers, the loan servicers, are required to do an escrow analysis every 12 months to say, because by law, I think they can only keep a 2-month cushion in there.
Correct.
They can only keep a 2 month of your taxes and insurance in there. If it's too much, they're going to give you a refund. If it's not enough, they're going to come begging for money. Okay, and you may have and you're going to have a couple choices. They're going to say, Tori, we're going to be short on this escrow here because we see your taxes are going up. You could send us a check to make that up, or we're going to raise your payment by $100 to $300 a month until you make that up, and then they would lower your payment. But rest assured, they're going to escrow analysis each year, and we'll be able to predict what's going to happen with your property for planning purposes. But each particular property may be very different. So it's kind of a blanket statement that we're giving, but as we narrow in on a property, we can help you plan for the future on that particular property there.
If you were in our office, we could literally get on the computer and say, okay, in the city of Howell, here's what the taxes look like. Yeah. We could pull up a house and say, here's what summer looks like, here's what winter in your price range, and that's how we're going to project. Another really, I think, important thing to understand as a first-time home buyer is how mortgage payments are made, especially when you're coming out of an apartment.
Yeah.
Mortgage payments are due the first of every month. They are standardized nationwide. So regardless of who you get your mortgage to or if the servicing were transferred, and we can touch on that and how that works, it's always the first of every month. There is a 15-day grace period. So as long as you pay it between the 1st and the 15th, there's no late fees. Okay? Now, when you close on a home, anybody, for instance, that's buying a house in April will not have a first house payment till June.
Will it be doubled because you missed?
No.
You just won't.
No, you won't. There's no payment, and the payments are always the same. So when we give you your closing cost, it's going to include something called an interest adjustment. Interest is paid on the mortgage. We cannot charge interest as a lender until you have used and enjoyed that home for 30 days. Okay? So if you closed April 15th, part of your closing cost will be this interest adjustment, which is a daily rate of interest on your new loan. So it's based on your loan amount and your interest rate. We would collect from April 15th to May 1st. When we make the June payment, you're paying all of the interest for May. So you're going to pay a little bit of interest for April at closing. All the escrow account numbers will be based on when you're closing, when those tax bills are due. So there's never a double payment. It's all payments always the same. But that's important to understand when you're renting, because you can then go, okay, if we start looking for a house in December, let's say we find one in January and we close in February. You can then go, when is my last rent payment? Yeah. And that impacts your budget. Because you may go, well, shoot, there's an additional $1,500 that we're going to have because we're not going to pay rent, right? Yeah. Or sometimes you might negotiate with the seller. Maybe the seller says, look, we love your offer, but we need to stay in this house for 30 days. Because you're on a month-to-month lease, you can say, great, we can negotiate that. And in some cases, buyers are giving the sellers free rent in the house. Okay. Now, nobody wants to give anything away free, but if you look at it and say, well, wait a minute, we don't have a house payment that month anyways, we've already budgeted our rent, we can get creative with the numbers as long as you kind of understand how all of that works. So,
I'd like to go back to that, how mortgages work a little bit. So on this particular house, we have a $200,000 mortgage. We closed on April 15th, and part of that closing cost, you're bringing 15 days of interest through the May 1st. Your first payment is due in June, right? So at the closing, we pay that 15 days of prepaid interest. It gets us to May 1st. So now your balance on May 1st is $200,000, but your balance on May 2nd and May 3rd goes up by $30, $40. It's the interest you pay on the loan. So at the end of May or June 1st, you may owe $201,000 because your interest occurs every day. So when you make your June 1st payment, first you're going to pay that $800, $1,000 interest, and then a couple $100 goes towards your principal. Now the following month, you may owe $199,800. That builds up every day through the month. You make the next house payment. First you pay the interest, and then a couple $100 comes off that principal. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
And it's considered mortgages are considered simple interest loans. So you will pay more interest in the beginning, and the longer you're in the house, you're paying less interest and more towards principal. Your car loans work the same way.
Yeah.
So now, does your husband work as well?
He does.
Okay. And how is your credit? Let's talk about credit, because that's a very, very important part of, do we even have option 1 or option 2? Okay.
Credit, totally. So again, the little things that I've learned are 100% from you guys. So I grew up on that credit card's bad. So I only actually personally got a credit card in January.
Okay.
Already I have seen my credit score go up about 80 points.
Wow.
But that's because I'm so new.
Is,
and I have,
is that your
it's all been
only
good.
trade line that you have active on your credit is one credit card?
One credit card. I personally have been in the apartment now for a year.
But that does not
And that's
report
it.
on your credit.
No.
No, that does not report on your
Do you
credit.
have car loans, student loans, anything of that
As
nature?
of December, a car loan.
Okay, good. So you got a car loan
Perfect.
and a credit card.
Yep.
Okay. Because generally it won't start reporting for about 6 months now, on your credit. But ultimately you want to be above 700 to go conventional loan. Under that, possibly conventional, but you may pay some higher rates. But our goal is to get you at 740 or above. Once you're above 740, I consider you untouchable. You can walk in any bank in the world and they they should not discriminate against credit scores.
But you're preparing and you're
Getting
listening and you're learning, and that's okay. I mean, to be honest with you, as a college student, I would say credit cards are bad. Okay? Because if you don't have an income, why are you borrowing money that you can't pay back? Now, I'm not saying
Talk to my kid.
I've had kids through college already, and what I did with my kids when they were younger was put them on one of my credit cards, just for incidentals, books or whatever.
totally.
But it did help them build credit. Not every parent is going to do that, which is fine. But if you didn't screw up your credit while you were in college, now you're just building. And it's not really that hard, right? My guess is you haven't paid a dime on credit card interest, right?
Correct.
You use it. If you're going to use it, you pay it off right away.
I fill up the gas tank and
Perfect.
I
There you
immediately
go.
get in the car and go, transfer.
Well, one word of advice here is have you and your husband do a joint application with us so we can get a reality check. Let's find out those credit scores, find out those weak points, because we have very, very cool simulation tools for credit that we can add another credit card, pay a balance down, see what's going on to improve and optimize your credit for the best programs available. And also with that loan application, you'll be putting your income in there. Then we can give you the limits of a house that you could buy under this program and or the next program, and give you your options and start educating you before we just jump off that cliff.
Yeah.
How I like to put it, we're not going to just let you go out there and jump off a bridge. What we're going to give you is a parachute. So if we go jump off that bridge, we're going to go together and we're going to give you a parachute with a nice soft landing.
And it's exciting. It's the thought of buying your first house is totally exciting, right?
is.
I mean, it's an exciting time. You graduate, you're building your career, you get married, and regardless of interest rates. And here's what consumers need to think about. Okay. As a first-time home buyer, I mean, I'm sure you hear about interest rates, right? We've talked about them. You've heard that they're going up, but is that going to scare you out of the market?
From what I've learned from you guys, no.
Okay. You're going to be ready when you're ready. You
Yes.
weren't ready last year. You certainly weren't ready 2 years ago. You will jump in the market. And Vic and I talked because, again, we're old. I bought my first house at 20 and I was at 10.5% interest.
Yeah, me too.
And Jim and I were like, well, that's what interest rates are. We're ready to buy a house. Let's buy a house. We didn't stay at 10.5 for long. So don't be scared about the interest rate as long as it makes sense from the budget.
Yeah,
right. And we're ready. You'll be happier. Now, you've probably heard us tell stories about both of my older kids have become homeowners. They're on their second homes. And daughter number 2 and her husband bought a house in Howell 3.5 years ago. They made like over $100,000 in 3 years. Now they fixed the house up. So it was,
for sure.
It wasn't that they just moved into a perfect house. They did fix it up a bit, but they didn't gut kitchens and bathrooms. They painted, they fixed a lot of things. They did upgrade countertops, do stuff like that. But you look at it and go, I mean, I think if I would have looked at it, they probably put 25 or 30 grand into the house. So they had an excellent rate of return. And you go, did they stretch when they bought? Sure. Even my oldest daughter called and said, why are they buying a house that much money? They can't afford that. And I'm like, well, they can, because my other daughter lives in Oakland County. So they have much higher taxes in Oakland County. And she didn't get the fact that, they were half.
Yeah.
So the purchase price could be higher than what she was at in Oakland County. and they would still end up with a payment they could afford. And, you go, we all had to jump off that bridge, and it's scary and it's exciting. Here's the thing. One of the most vivid memories in my whole entire life was closing on my first house. We left the closing. I remember the building we were in. I remember the closing room. And Jim and I drove to the house before we had to go back to work back then. We couldn't just take the whole day off, just to put the key in the door, open your own door for the first time, and walk into that empty house.
Yeah. That's every first time home buyer's dream. You think about it. You think about getting there.
Yeah, I did that. As soon as I opened the door, I go, look at all the work I got to do. I
Time to call the moving truck.
I want to put something in perspective here. Appreciation rate in Livingston County over the last 63 years has been 3.89%. In the last few years, we've seen double-digit appreciation. So just on that $200,000 home we're thinking about buying, just at a conservative 6% appreciation, that $200,000 home will run you $212,000 next year, meaning you got to save $1,000 a month after government payroll taxes just to keep up with appreciation. How much are you guys saving a month right now?
Probably about $500, $600.
So you're actually falling behind the curveball based off appreciation. And that is so important to build that case, to talk to the banks of moms and dads and say, look, we want to enter the market. We know it's time. We want to have a family. The time is now, because these prices are not going to go down, So if you're going to try to save for that down payment, you're almost saving yourself right into the poorhouse.
Yeah.
In a sense.
And not to scare you.
No,
you
that's
can't,
okay.
if you're not ready to jump in right now, don't, but you've got to, you just got to know that, okay, when are we going to be ready, and kind of go from there. And it doesn't hurt to get educated.
Yeah.
We do have people come to us and say, I want to buy in the next 6 months or a year. That's okay. Let's start the conversation. Yeah. Let's start the education process, because the more you know, the better prepared you're going to be.
Right. And one other point is, we've had this on the show many other times, is many people say, I want to save 20% down so I can avoid that private mortgage insurance. To me, that is an unwise move, unless that's what makes you comfortable.
Yeah.
But buy now with as little money down. As you get money, you can always recast and get out of the PMI. And the PMI will ultimately go away. PMI is not the devil. Mm-hmm. It's a tool in a toolbox. We need to educate you on how to become a craftsman, on how to utilize that tool. And remember, interest rates go up and down. We're going to use the mortgage market and the programs to help build your future, and we take advantage as things change in your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to be prepared and comfortable. And it's exciting.
It is pretty cool.
And one thing to think about too, as a first-time home buyer, is what you're willing to accept as far as condition of a home. Now, one of the things that I think is important for first-time homebuyers to potentially look for is an opportunity. You may find a home that looks great, got a new roof, it's got new windows, new furnace and air conditioning. Okay, those are let's call those the big ticket items. But you walk in and you're like, well, the wallpaper is not, how long has this wallpaper been here? So there's a lot of, they could be called an estate sale or a downsizing situation where that homeowner maybe was in that house 20, 30, 40 years. And typically as people age, they don't update the decor, because you know what? They still like what was there when they were 30. And now they're pushing 80, but the house is clean and you could technically live in it, but you might want to take down that wallpaper or paint. Mm-hmm. That is a great opportunity. My first house had gobs of wallpaper. I think I stripped wallpaper for 2 or 3 years. My husband just about killed me, because he would go hunting. Mm-hmm. Hunting season came, Jim takes off, and here I am,
you get
home
out
alone,
your scraper.
me with the dogs, the scraper, the steamer, the smelly chemicals that you put. Because back in the old wallpaper, man, it was just about cemented onto the wall. Oh. And he would come home and go, "What happened to the kitchen?" I'm like, "Oh, the wallpaper came down." And he's like, and I didn't paint back then. I do know how to paint now.
My advice would be, it doesn't have to be pretty. You can have pink walls and yellow doorknobs or whatever. What you're looking for is functionally sound, and you're making sure that the big ticket items are there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
the
don't
roof.
be afraid. Don't expect it to be Pottery Barn perfect, HDTV ready. Look
And they
at
get
it with
done,
the
they
vision.
get it done in 30 minutes on HD.
Hey,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
that's not life.
That's where you can get some great opportunities where you go, it's okay I had a client a couple years ago buy a house that they had red shag carpet in the basement, and it wasn't gross. The basement was clean. It was still functional, but since then it's been slowly remodeled and updated.
And you can use that actually to your advantage, because a lot of home buyers can't visualize.
Yeah.
All they see is the old wallpaper and the shag carpeting. But if you can look beyond that, there's a diamond in the rough there.
Yes,
You're looking
yeah.
for functionally sound, big ticket items taken care of, because you don't have $15,000, $20,000 if something happens immediately.
Right. I mean, would you rather have a 3-bedroom house with ugly wallpaper or a 2-bedroom house that somebody painted gray and white? You're going to be the better investment is to go for the 3-bedroom.
Because of resale,
Because
that
of
is the
resale.
most popular is a
Yes,
3-bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, those types of things you can start thinking about. And
Let's just talk about that, about resale. When we get into buying you a home, you also want to look at the exit strategy, right? Because what if you have a job transfer? What if there's an illness, a death in the family, and you got to exit quickly? Make sure you have a very marketable home, something that you can get out of very quickly. And the most desirable home is that 3-bedroom, 2-car garage with a basement.
yeah.
Yep.
If
So
you can get
that's I would think solid advice. That's how I bought my first home, 3-bedroom with a 2-car garage. So
Not the Michigan garage where it's just boxes in the garage, but like actually room for 2 cars.
Yeah, that would be nice.
well, no. Hey, I got a 3-car garage, and I still don't park in there because of all the kids' bicycles, toys, and all that.
Yeah, I have a 4-car garage
Yeah.
that I can get 2 cars in.
Hey,
Yeah.
you gotta
But-
have some storage, right?
Exactly. There's always something. The biggest thing in my world is recycling. Do
Yeah.
you know how much work that is?
So much.
So much work. And there's so many boxes. Like I need I should have had another garage built just for trash and recycling, just because the breaking down the boxes.
I'm not a recycler. I figure it came from the ground. It's going back to the ground. What other questions you have? Me and Danielle are monopolizing the conversation here.
You're good. We talked about credit score. We talked about mortgage. We talked about
Cash
how
to
to
close.
save well, cash to close.
And I would assume that both you and your husband are W-2 employees.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, job. That is a good
Yeah,
one to bring
let's
up.
talk
Jobs.
about
It's a
Yeah.
great way to make money.
Yes.
Jobs.
So, another thing I've learned from you guys, my husband's name's Daniel. I've been teasing him because he currently works in retail, and he's been doing the classic retail thing where he's, I don't know, like it's fine, but I don't love it. And I've been telling him, okay, if you decide you don't love it, you need to make that decision, because what I've learned from you guys is we cannot enter into this pre-approval process when you're like, I'm just going to swap. I'm just going to change jobs right in the middle.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's a wild card.
But
Yes.
he can't be a brain surgeon and then be a welder. That's
No.
changing industries. You have to have some time behind you.
Yeah.
But if it's someone in the same line of work, and every case is different, that's why we need you to come in and have that onion peeler so we can lay down, I guess, the guidelines under your particular situation to best advise you to navigate through this.
So I guess with that, because we're talking about everyone's particular situation, so I've openly told you guys that when the time comes, I know I'm going to come to you guys for advice. How would a brand new person who's never met with a mortgage person before go about setting up that first meeting? What does that look like, those very
up the
first steps?
phone.
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone and we take an intake and just really listen
Yeah.
first. Find out what you're trying to do.
Of course, we have all the modern technology. We text, you can apply online. But here's the thing that I find with most first-time homebuyers. The app
Yes.
confuses people because they go, well, I don't know what to answer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can give me your name, address, social security number, but there's a whole list of other questions that we go through to ask you. Where do you want to live? And the app will gather some of that, but a lot of times first-time homebuyers get the deer in the headlights look. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to answer that question.
and when
And it's honestly, I think for most people, it's easier to call.
Yeah, and just take that 10 minutes, and then we can navigate you. Okay, now go to the app, answer the questions like this if you
Yes.
choose, because most people don't know how to calculate their own income.
Yes, that's
Okay.
a huge,
Me.
yeah.
Is it gross? Is it net? Is it this? And And it starts with just that conversation of let's understand your wants, needs, desires, why you want to move, why you want to buy a home. And we're basically on an information gathering thing. We don't bite.
Yeah.
This is what we do for a living.
Now, Vic mentioned on income. So you could get on the app and you could apply, but you go, well, what's my monthly income? A lot of times people will put their after-tax income.
Yes.
And that's not what we need. So if you make $20 an hour, let me pull out my calculator here.
$3,600 a month.
It's 30. Okay.
Ooh,
I didn't.
speedy.
Yeah. That would be $3,600 a month. That's not what you're taking home, but that's the number we
3,200,
need
I'm
to get to.
sorry.
32. Okay. So I was going to.
Hey, it's a little early here, pal.
It's too
Okay.
fast.
Need more coffee. And then sometimes people get overtime. Sometimes people get bonus. All of those things. Honestly, what we want to see is a month worth of pay stubs, 2 years worth of W-2s. We will need your federal tax returns for rural development, even though you're not self-employed. And then usually I ask for one bank statement at pre-approval because we know we're always going to need another one. But the basics, that's the basics that we would need to review. And
Here's a very interesting situation is that I've learned as a newly married person. You say 2 years of federal tax returns. My tax returns are night and day between last year and this year
Correct.
as a newly married person. And after working my first year as fully employed in a big girl job.
right. So what we would do, when did you graduate again?
December 2020.
Okay. So depending on when you apply for, if you don't buy a house until later this year, you're going to have 2 full cycles.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2021 is full-time, 2022 would be full-time. If you were to buy sooner than that, we may ask you for a copy of your college degree.
Yeah.
Just to show that,
That
okay, you have a
becomes-
2-year history.
Right. That degree becomes part of your history. Or even, let's say somebody was a welder or an electrician. If they went to trade school, that would also count is their prior history, because we can say, well, their income was lower because they were in school. Now they're licensed. Now they're graduated. And here we can see that they've transitioned to full-time.
Well, and let's go back to your position. You're a videographer, right? Let's say you went to school 4 years for a videographer, and all of a sudden you started your job today. Well, in 30 days worth of pay stubs, we can use that income because you have 4-year history. You just didn't get paid in the first year or first 4 years. So every situation is different, but people, you'll be surprised in what you do qualify for.
Yeah.
We're not here to turn down tax returns or nothing. It just needs to make sense.
Right.
It really does. And once we explain that to clients, their eyes open and all of a sudden their shoulders come up and say, oh my God, the light at the end of the tunnel's been turned on.
Yeah.
It's pretty intimidating because I remember when I was 23, it's like, oh, I need a mortgage, And the mortgage guy never sat down and really explained nothing. He just said, here, go do it. And I'm like, but I wanted to learn. Now I want to make sure our clients learn.
Yes. I mean, when I started in the mortgage industry when I was 19 years old as a backup receptionist, and I was there for 6 months and went, I think we need to buy a house, because I figured out, I'm like, this isn't hard. And that's exactly what I said, Vic. One of the worst things that ever happened to me at that time, when I was 19, almost 20, my mom was moving out of state with my siblings, and I decided to stay behind. My mom moved to Vegas. I didn't want to go. I'm from Chicago. I would have gone back to Chicago, but Jim and I had just started dating. So I was going to school. I got a full-time job, and I thought, I'm going to try to stay in Michigan by myself for a year. If it doesn't work out, I would go back to Chicago and, figure life out that way. Well, I was trying to find a place to live, and I lived in Plymouth at the time, and I was looking at apartments, and I was also looking at mobile homes. And there was a nice mobile home park in Plymouth, and they had brand new mobile homes. I think back then it was $18,000 for this mobile home. And I got approved for the loan for the mobile home, but I also had to get approved to live at the park. And they rejected me because of my age.
Oh my goodness.
Because you were too young.
They thought I was too young at 20 years old. And
You didn't use your fake ID back then?
I didn't have a fake ID, Vic. I was afraid of all that
That's
stuff.
right, you're from Chicago.
I was afraid of all that. I was that kid. You know, I didn't get in I'm not saying I didn't get in any trouble. I didn't get in much trouble because I was afraid of the consequences. I knew my mom would describe it as I would take it to the line, but I usually didn't cross the line. I knew where the line was. So I remember being crushed because this mobile home, I mean, it was cute. It was all brand new. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm going to be 20 living on my own.
Aren't you glad you didn't get it?
I was so glad I didn't get it because you don't realize how expensive lot rent was. And that never stops. Like you could pay off your home and you're going to pay lot rent forever. And you don't get any benefits like paying taxes or at least deductible.
Notoriously, mobile homes do not appreciate the way that a house does.
So that was a moment in time where I look back and go, my gosh, I was crushed when it happened. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. You know?
What other questions you have as we wrap up the show? Where are we leaving you deer in the headlights?
Feel pretty good. The thing that I wish I could go screaming to the world and tell everyone is that the thing about both of you that I know and have known since I started working with you a year ago is that at the end of the day, I know no matter what your circumstance, financially, life-wise, anything, you guys are here for the people. Yeah. End of the day. Yeah. So I know if I leave here and it's literally we end the show and I'm like, dang it, there was a question I want to ask. I could literally text one of the two of you. I'd be like, hey, I remembered.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. In order to get what you want in your life, you help others get what they want in their life. And it's a pretty simple formula.
Yeah. You know? And there's, once you get to the pre-approval stage and then you choose the realtor that you're going to work with, there will be more things that unfold. Yeah. One of the really fun things is when the realtors set you up on a search because it comes to your email and you'll see everything that's in your market and your price range. And we'll give you a range, right? We're going to talk. And that's the other thing that you would dive into deeper with the pre-approval is, okay, this is going to be your low end. We're going to see where your high end is. And we want you to understand the increments. We'll run numbers. Maybe we run 200,000, 220, 240. Okay. Yeah. So that when you get out there, you see, because you may go, 220 is not really where we want to be, but you know what? 240 makes a big difference. And then you and Dan can decide, does this still fit our budget? Are we comfortable moving forward? And then you go from there. But the tools that the realtors give you are a lot of fun.
And always recommend
very fun to play with.
When you're searching, you go through the realtor's portal because that'll bring up the actual IDX feed, which has the summer, the winter tax, and the SEV value on there. Unlike Realtor.com and Zillow, it becomes somewhat of I just say, use the realtor portal. Yeah. Yes. So number one, get pre-approved. Start working with the lender now. Get educated. Discuss with the family. Is there a potential for gifts? If so, how much? Do not move any money. Get a verbal commitment. Also, do either of you have 401ks that you could take loans and or withdrawals from? Because
probably not yet. They're too young.
Well, and it's just a question there for any of our other listeners, because you want to know how much cash you're going to have available, because you may run into these people wanting, these sellers wanting appraisal guarantees where you're paying not only the lender closing cost, you're paying the seller's closing costs. So we need to understand what's the max cash you can get on or get a hold of. Not that we're going to use it, but we need to understand what cards are on the table if we have to play them so we could best, advise.
It's just putting all the tools in the toolbox for you, And again, you might not need them all, but,
we'll use
an exciting time. Yeah.
There. Danielle, any closing words?
Well, thank you so much, Tori, for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And, you know how to get a hold of us if you have questions.
Thank you for answering my questions.
And that was Danielle Boote. That was Tori. My name is Victor Bals, and we will see you next time here on A Smarter Way Home.